Hello everybody. In this video lecture, we are going to discuss and analyze line by line the poem Enterprise by the Indian English poet Nissim Ezekiel. As we all know, Ezekiel was a Jewish Indian poet and he was a modernist writer. In fact, he is sometimes also referred to as the father of modern Indian English poetry. This is a beautiful poem and it is rather didactic. It gives a message, it gives a moral, and it is up to the reader to interpret the meaning of the poem because it is not actually presented very clearly or openly. It is rather hidden, and that hidden meaning can be interpreted in a number of different ways. In fact, critics have analyzed this poem and found a number of meanings in it, and let us see how we can treat the poem. So first of all, as an introduction, I have here a few points in front of you. First of all, it is the structure. The poem is of 30 lines, 6 stanzas, and the poet has basically presented the first person narrator in the sense which means that the poet himself or is using the I as the narrator, as the speaker of the poem. He is describing all the incidents, whatever is happening in his own voice. Thirdly, it is a lyric poem and it has a specific rhyme scheme which goes A B A B A, because each stanza has 5 lines. So this is the continuous rhyme scheme for every stanza. Fourthly, the poet uses different poetic devices in the poem, just like sarcasm. Sarcasm is actually something which we see in the very first line. Why in the first line? That we will come to know when we just start reading the poem. But sarcasm is definitely there. It is also there in in other places also, number of places actually, and it is up to the reader to understand the sarcasm, which is a little bit hidden. Then we have personification also, as it is mentioned over here that it is in the last line of the first stanza where the poet is talking of the sun. So the sun is personified. That, of course, we will be again seeing when we are doing the first stanza. The poet has also used metaphors. For example, in the second stanza, he uses the metaphor of the way of serpents and of goats. So what does he mean? This we will discuss as we move on. So let us see the text of the poem. So here in front of you on this slide, you can see two stanzas, 5 lines each, as I had told you, and they have that continuous rhyme scheme. I am going to read, and please understand, try to see how the poet is talking of a pilgrimage. What is a pilgrimage? Pilgrimage is a journey to a holy place. So it is a journey that is being undertaken to a religious place, to a holy place, a spiritual journey, you can call it. Now, a pilgrimage can be undertaken alone or it can be as a group also. So, if the poet is alone or if the poet is part of a group, that also we will come to know. First of all, let us see what he has written in the first stanza. It says, "It started as a pilgrimage, exalting minds and making all the burdens light. The second stage explored but did not test the call. The sun beat down to match our rage." So, in the very first line, the poet is telling us that there is a pilgrimage which is taking place and which is commencing, rather, it is beginning. So, it is the beginning here, and the pilgrims are all ready, and he says exalting minds and making all the burdens light. Why is he calling the minds exalting? uh, you can say elevated, you can say full of happiness, enthusiastic. So all the people who are part of this journey, because he uses the word mind, so we come to know that there are many people who are part of this journey. All of them are feeling so enthusiastic and elevated about the journey, about the prospect of undertaking a difficult journey, because he says that every burden seemed to be light. It is, of course, everything is in the mind. If you are happy, if you are feeling enthusiastic, then if any problem that you might encounter, or if you are encountering at that time, it seems to be very light. It seems to be very, the burden seems to be very easy to carry. So he says that everybody was enthusiastic about the prospect of undertaking a difficult journey, and every problem seemed to be nothing. It seemed to be very light. It seemed to not matter at all, because they were happy that they are going on a pilgrimage. So that is the kind of attitude with which this pilgrimage has started. So right now, in the beginning, if you notice, in the beginning, the attitude of the travelers, they are traveling with, they consider this as a noble goal to achieve, because it is a pilgrimage and it is a holy expedition. So definitely the attitude is that of enthusiasm. Right? And he says the second stage explored but did not test the call. So he says that when everything was calculated, here explored means calculated. What is calculated? What does the poet mean by the second stage? He means to say that any upcoming challenges that one might face whenever you are undertaking a journey, obviously you calculate what challenges will come on the way, what requirements will be there, what difficulties will be there. So you know the path, you know the difficulties, and then you decide to undertake the journey if you think that you are able to bear it. So he says all the upcoming challenges were calculated, but they did not seem to be too much. They were not. And it did not seem impossible to continue. So definitely there were challenges. People knew that this journey is going to be difficult, but they also believed that any challenge, any difficulty did not make it impossible to continue. So what did they decide to do? They decided to continue, and the reason is that they believed absolutely and firmly that this was a holy expedition, and it deserved this enthusiasm, and it deserved to go on. If we look at the last line of the first stanza, it says the sun beat down to match our rage. So here this is the personification that I had written about in the previous slide. The poet has used the poetic device of personification. The sun has been personified as a as a challenger, which has almost the same rage, or you can say enthusiasm, as the pilgrims. So if the pilgrims were enthusiastic, it seems the sun too was enthusiastic, and it beat down its heat on the travelers, but but the travelers, they were not unnerved, Please notice that in the beginning, whatever challenge is coming in their path, whether it is the heat of the sun also, which is too difficult to, it makes too difficult to travel, yet he says it did not unnerve or discourage the pilgrims. So here the personification is there, and I hope you have understood how the sun is personified. And we move on to the second stanza where he says, we stood it very well. And here, this is where we come to know that it is a group. It is a group which is undertaking the pilgrimage, and the narrator, or you can say the poet himself, is part of the group. So he is narrating his own experience of being part of the group of pilgrims. And he says, we stood it very well, I thought, observed and put down copious notes on things the peasants sold and bought, the way of serpents and of goats, three cities where a sage had taught. So these are all the observations that the poet and the fellow travelers have made on the way. As they are moving, they are passing through cities, and they are passing through different places, and wherever they go they see different kinds of people, different kinds of lifestyle, and they are making notes. They are observing and making notes, writing down details of their journey as they progress. So we can say that they are making observations on their way. They are, you can say, they are taking down descriptive notes about whoever they meet, whatever they see. You can call it their surroundings. And also note that the poet has used very simple language. If as a syntax, if you want to see it, if you want to see it as the use of grammatical form, or say vocabulary, there is nowhere that you will find very difficult or some rare words or a kind of references which are difficult to understand. He uses very, very easy language, simple language, but the meaning is definitely deep. There is depth, there is depth in meaning. And how do you understand the meaning? So overtly, on the face of it, it looks as if the poet is only talking about people traveling and making notes. So that is not too difficult to understand. But then what is the deeper meaning? What is the depth in meaning that I have just mentioned over here? This is what we were talking about when we said that the poet has put in some hidden meanings for the reader to interpret. So here the reader can interpret it as uh, the 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 travelers distracted. You can very well see that this is not a journey which is being taken as a tourist. You are not there to look at places. You are not there to enjoy yourself. This is not that kind of journey. What kind of journey it is? It is a journey where the pilgrim is supposed to have holy thoughts in his mind. The pilgrim is supposed to think about their goal. So here the travelers seem to be distracted from their goal. And what is it? It is a search of God. It is a journey undertaken to search for the holy form. You are not there just to look at things and make notes. So you can call it a distraction. If you think about it from a perspective, or this whole poem, this whole pilgrimage as an analogy on life, if it is an analogy on life, then you can actually see how man begins, or the human soul is pure and innocent in the beginning, and man begins his life in search of a holy and righteous path. But just like life moves on in over here, the journey is progressing, but when life moves on, people get distracted with materialistic things, they get distracted with wayward thoughts. Sometimes they try, or maybe they also take up the wrong path. Then what happens? It means that you have lost the path which you had originally taken. It was the path in search of God. And here, what are they doing? They are just looking at things, they are distracted, and they are making copious notes for nothing. This is not something that they had come out in this journey for. So he says, we just observe these things. And now we move on to the next stanza. Look here, the poet has written that, but when the differences arose on how to cross a desert patch, we lost a friend whose stylish prose was quite the best of all our patch. A shadow falls on us and grows. So you can see that as the journey is progressing, the attitude of people is changing. In the very beginning only, in the very first stanza only, I had mentioned how the attitude is important, how the pilgrims start out with a very positive attitude, enthusiasm, an elevated spirit, a holy thought in their minds. But see how as the journey progresses, their egos start clashing. Somebody says we must cross this desert like this, and somebody says let us cross this desert from some other place. And so what happens, they just have to cross a desert patch rather, and it seems to be a very trivial matter. So it is a trivial matter, and yet their egos clash over small things. They don't matter at all. Does the journey matter? No, it is the goal which matters. But right now the travelers seem to be losing sight of the goal, and thinking more about the journey, thinking more about the path, which actually does not matter. So some people are actually broken off from the group only because their egos are too much to handle. So you can say they lose fellow travelers. Here one has gone, and you will see that more people are distracted, more people break away from the group. So they lose fellow travelers because of conflicts. So conflicts start happening. And he says, a shadow falls on us. What is this shadow? Of course, it is not literal. It is a metaphorical shadow. It is a metaphor. What is this shadow a metaphor for? This shadow is a metaphor for sadness, loss of enthusiasm, that enthusiasm with which they had started out. Now, because they are fighting, almost fighting with each other, they are having clashes and conflicts with each other. So it is as if the whole group is under a cloud of sorrow, sadness, and the enthusiasm is now lost. This shadow can also be called a premonition. Of course, the meaning of premonition means it is almost predicting. It is telling us about something which is going to happen in the future. So what is the premonition? This shadow is like a premonition for a rough patch. ahead. Rough patch ahead means the difficulties that they are going to have ahead. So because they are fighting it just now, they are still very far away from the goal and they have started fighting. So somehow people have this feeling that the path ahead is not going to be easy. It is like a rough patch. Now I'm reading the fourth stanza, and it says, another phase was reached when we were twice attacked. And see, if there was a premonition, if there was a feeling that things are not going to be easy, then that prediction seems to have come true, because here in this fourth stanza, the poet is telling us that soon afterwards, as they were moving on, they have reached another phase of the journey, maybe a new place, a different place on the way. So they were attacked also. So they are facing growing difficulties, new problems, and the journey seems to becoming more and more difficult. And he says we lost our way. So even this is another problem, we lost our way. But see, this as an allegorical meaning, you can call it losing. It can be a metaphor for losing meaning in life, not just as a pilgrim, but as a person who is living a life itself being a journey, a pilgrimage where ultimately you are going to meet God. You are losing sight of the goal itself, and you are losing way. You are not following the right path, the correct path, the path which must be followed by the soul in order to unite with God in the end. So he says, we lost our way. And this one phrase itself says a lot. And he says, a section claimed. And what does a section mean? A section of people. So this is a group of people, as I had said before, that right now they in the earlier paragraph they had lost one person, but now they are going to lose more and more people. The group which again broke off. So another group breaks off. Why are they breaking off? Because now it is not with the same joy and the same enthusiasm. A section claimed its liberty to leave the group. Liberty means freedom. They said that we are free to leave, we don't want to carry on with you. They are doubting the leader, they are doubting the leader, they want to be on their own. It is as if they are going to follow another path, not the set path. So doubting the leader itself says a lot. Again I say, look at it in a metaphorical sense, where if you have somebody like a guru, a saint, a guide who is going to take you through the path of God, through your life. He is like a torchlight to you. And then ultimately, or in between only, you start doubting your guru, you start doubting your teacher, you start doubting that guiding force in your life. What happens? You go astray. Then you yourself think that you can find a way, but it is not easy to find a way when you have lost your guiding light. So the leader here is the guiding light, but they doubt him. And he says, I tried to pray. So prayer seems to be the only right thing to do, because everything else is failing. Everything else is failing. So the poet says he believes that maybe the prayer that he can do, prayers to God, can make things right. And he says, our leader said he smelt the sea. Smelling the sea. What does smelling the sea means? That he tries to give them hope. Hope regarding what? Because there are people who are doubting the leader and they are saying that we will go, we will not stay with this group. So what is the leader trying to do? A good leader always tries to give hope in difficult times. So the leader tries to give hope of the destination being near. So he says, don't go away, because we are near the destination and I can smell the sea. So is the destination near or not? Let us see in the next paragraph. So this is stanza number 5, where the poet says, "We noticed nothing as we went." Now, in the previous stanza, the last line, the leader was trying to give some hope by saying that the destination is near, the goal is almost reached. But in the very first line of this stanza, it appears that it was only a false hope, and they saw nothing. They saw nothing. The goal was nowhere in sight. And naturally, anybody would feel distressed, they would be discouraged that whatever the leader had said, that had not happened, and they saw nothing, they noticed nothing as we went. They are moving, they are moving, they are continuing the journey, but unfortunately the goal is nowhere in sight. And he says, a straggling crowd of little hope. Look at this line, a straggling crowd of little hope, and compare it with the very beginning, compare it with first stanza, where this was a group. Earlier it was a group full of enthusiasm. Do you remember in the very beginning he had mentioned that we were so enthusiastic, it was as if we were fighting with the sun, and we were matching the rage of the sun, and they were ready to bear any difficulty, any burden seemed light, they were so elevated. But unfortunately they seem to have lost. Now they are a wandering. Straggling means they are a wandering crowd. They are no longer a group with an aim. It seems as if they are aimless. And of course, hope. If you lose hope, the goal is futile. If there is no hope, then the whole journey also is futile. It is waste, a complete waste. Why? Because you have no hope. And please remember, hope is so important because this is a pilgrimage. Again, I say, when you are walking on the path of God, you must have hope, and you must have faith, and you must have belief. But they seem to lose their belief. And if you look at it in the allegorical sense, life is all about faith and belief. But unfortunately, what happens? People lose it too quickly. They start questioning God, they start questioning their spiritual leader. Why? Because they become egoistic, they cannot bear the difficulties. So people start questioning and start losing hope. This happens with life also, just like this is happening with the group of people which have now become a straggling crowd. And he says, ignoring what the thunder meant, deprived of common needs like soap, some were broken, some merely bent. I am going to come to the thunder in a little bit, because this needs a deeper understanding, a deeper analysis. But let us see what he is trying to say in this second last line of the stanza. He says, deprived of common needs like soap. So this is the sarcasm. Like other examples of sarcasm before, this is also a very sarcastic comment by the poet, that they, in such a journey of faith, of God, they are thinking of such trivial things. They are thinking of things which are their, which you can say, their basic amenities. So in front of God, before even meeting God, they are thinking of things like what amenities they should have. And he says, we were deprived of common needs like soap. And ultimately, some were broken, some were bent. So the group seems to be very tired. The group seems to be almost discouraged. They don't seem to have any motive to go on. And this is absolutely in contrast with how they had started. They had started differently, they had started with a very different prospect. But right now, what we see is that they are totally tired and they have given up the pursuit of their goal. Now I will come back to this one line here where the poet has talked of the thunder. And I'm just going to read these two lines again. He says, "We were a straggling crowd of little hope, ignoring what the thunder meant." I have already told you that now the pilgrims seem to have lost complete sight of God. Obviously, God is their goal. And in life also, there are times when people face difficulties, but unfortunately, under difficult circumstances, people seem to give up easily. Where they should persevere, they they should try, but they just feel tired. The difficulties seem to be too much for them. They are impatient and they are dissatisfied because they are actually following the wrong path. They are looking for soap where they should be looking for God. So they are dissatisfied, they are impatient, and they give up easily a place, the time where they should persevere. They just give up hope. So this happens in life also. And he says, ignoring what the thunder meant. Now it is important to see why the poet has used this particular metaphor of the thunder. And I have two or three interpretations over here, which will be, of course, because you are students of modern poetry, and we all know how Ezekiel himself was influenced by the Western modern poets like Eliot and like Ezra Pound. And Eliot's The Wasteland comes to our mind when he says, ignoring what the thunder meant. So Eliot's The Wasteland is what comes to our mind, and it had a section called What the Thunder Said. I hope you have all read and analyzed The Wasteland. I also have a complete set of video lectures on that poem on every section. So in that poem also, Eliot had talked about the thunder as a representative of the the voice of God. It is as if God himself was trying to say something in the voice of the thunder. And man, what did man do? Man completely and totally ignored what God was trying to say. This is the modern life that man is living. And here in this poem also, Ezekiel is saying the same thing. The modern man, what is he doing? He, in this life that he is living, he gives up so easily that he cannot even hear what God is saying directly to him, the message of God. So, for thunder, this can be definitely one of the interpretations, that it is the voice of God, just like Eliot had mentioned it in his poem, The Wasteland. Another interpretation can be the thunder as a precursor of rain, and rain itself is blessing. So that if there is thunder, rain cannot be too far behind. So rain is near. But man, because he has lost all hope, he is not listening to the thunder, he is not convinced that blessing is coming. He just falls short, he just gives up too quickly. And if he had persevered a little more, he would have got the blessings of God. But unfortunately, he gives up too easily. Thunder can also be the inner voice. What is the inner voice? It is the voice of the soul. So his soul is trying to tell him something, but he is as if he's deaf and he cannot hear what his soul is trying to tell him. The soul is basically begging him to continue on the journey, to go and try to find God. The journey, which is a holy journey, it is a pilgrimage, and the soul is asking him, begging him to continue on the journey to find God. But do we hear? The poet says we ignore, we do not hear. So these are the different interpretations of what the thunder here can mean, and what Ezekiel wants us to understand when he says that we are just broken, we are bent, we feel we are tired, we are looking for other things which are really so trivial, and we are not listening to the thunder. After this, it is the last stanza, which is the sixth stanza of the poem. Now, this is the last stanza. The poet says, when finally we reached the place we hardly know why we were there. So now that the goal has finally been reached, they have reached the destination, they are so tired, they are as a broken group. They say we hardly know why we were there. It is as if the significance, the importance of the enterprise. Please do not forget that the title of the poem is The Enterprise. So the significance of the enterprise itself seems to be lost. So they are here because of some reason, but they seem to have lost the importance of that reason. Now that they have reached here, it all appears to be waste. He says the trip had darkened every face where they should be. It is a contrast. Please again contrast to the first stanza where they were radiating like the sun. They were all so happy and elevated like the sun. He says, now we are darkened. Darkened means we are tired, again, broken. If you remember, he had used broken and bent, these two words he had used. So darkened is almost same as broken and bent. He says we were tired and we did not even bother, that now we have ultimately reached here. He says our deeds were neither great nor rare. So he says, now that we have attained the goal, now that we have reached our destination, it does not seem to be worthwhile. It does not seem to be not worthwhile. So it is the kind of attitude with which they have finished. And please contrast, please remember the attitude with which they had begun. So beginning and ending is completely opposite to each other. The question that definitely comes to the reader's mind is, why do they feel this way? Why do they feel that the whole journey is not worthwhile? It is worthless. It is a waste. The reason is loss of faith. If you have already lost faith, if you have already lost belief, then obviously, even if you find God, that whole process of finding God seems to be worthless, it seems to be waste. So this is the loss of faith, is something that the modern man is suffering from, and all modern poets at that time were talking of this, that man in the modern world is basically suffering from loss of faith, and that makes the whole journey of life, the journey of life is futile. So if you look at this poem as not as a pilgrimage, actual journey, if you look at it as a journey of life, then by the time your life is over, The modern man felt that I have lived so many years of life, but unfortunately, my life seems to be waste. It seems to be useless. It seems to be worthless. Why? Because in his whole life, he has lost faith, he has lost belief, he has lost his ability to trust God. And he says, our deeds were neither great nor rare. The whole life appears to be just common. Nothing rare about it, nothing great about it. And look at the last line of the poem is where he's driving home the point. He says, home is where we have to gather grace. Now that the journey has ended and they have traveled far away from home, they are reminded of home. Man is reminded that he could have lived a life full of grace, lived a life full of God's blessings only if he had realized at the correct point in time. He says he wishes that he had more faith. And here there is another interpretation where home can refer to faith, so he wishes he had more faith. There is another interpretation which I will definitely give it to you before I finish off this video. And for the last line, I'm giving you another thought of home as Mumbai. Now, how does the city of Mumbai come over here? Because when you have read about Nissim Ezekiel as a poet, Ezekiel was a poet who was always writing about identity. He was always writing about belongingness. And especially if you have already gone through my video lecture on the poem Background Casually, that is an autobiographical poem in which he talks of his home, which is Mumbai, and his struggle with belongingness in India. So ultimately, in that poem, also in the very last line, he had said that I have found my home and I have found that this place is where I will belong. This place, this city, Mumbai, and this country, India. So here, even in in this poem also, in the very last line when he mentions home, there are a number of critics who actually think that this whole poem could be his own journey, the poet's journey of loss in faith and then trying to find faith and ultimately realizing that whatever relationship he may have with his city and his country, ultimately this is home. So for Ezekiel, as the writer of these lines, this could be his journey also, and this could be his home also, and the fact that he has accepted Mumbai as his home. So I hope you have enjoyed the poem, as and I had mentioned earlier only that in this poem and through this poem the poet has tried to give a message, and there are a lot of hidden meanings on the face of it. On the surface level, this poem it has uses very easy language, there is nothing much, just a journey. But if you look at the covert meanings and interpretations, there can be a number of interpretations, so you can actually call it an allegorical poem. Thank you very much for watching the video.